The topic was education reform, but the buzz was all about a controversial speaker on the UConn campus today. 60s radical Bill Ayers, known for organizing bombings during protests of the Vietnam War, spoke to a group of students there today. Protesters lined the streets outside the auditorium, clearly not pleased with the university's choice, but some were there to support Ayers despite his violent past. Fox 61's Tom Lewis joins us now with more detail. Tom.
Brent, Bill Ayers is either a terrorist or he's a peace hero. That's depending on who you speak to. Now, when Ayers was a college kid himself, he was part of a group called the Weather Underground. They used bombs to push across a message of peace during the Vietnam War. Now, he escaped prosecution and now teaches at an Illinois university. Well, today at UConn, many demanded an apology, and one-on-one, I asked him if that apology was forthcoming. Many are wondering, is he a teacher or is he a terrorist?
That change does not always come from above and from the legislature.
Bill Ayers is an educator in his 60s, but it was his activities in the 1960s that brought out the placard-carrying protesters, labeled by some a terrorist for his radical youth and his violent past.
He has the right to speak, but we have the right also to protest against what he stands for. And what he does stand for is terrorism. He was a terrorist of the Weather Underground, and he committed horrible acts.
The protesters followed Ayers inside as he spoke about education reform, unfazed by the swirl of controversy surrounding his visit to the UConn campus.
The people who invited me were interested in my work on education, and I think that, one of the things I think is very important, and I think it's important for Fox News and for other news outlets and reporters, is that in a democracy, there's nothing dangerous about conversation.
But part of that conversation was spelled out on the signs outside. Hugs, not bombs. Ayers was part of a group that built and detonated nail bombs in the 60s, resulting in at least one death.
I think he's forfeited his right to speak on behalf of any issues because of that. And until he apologizes, I don't want to hear him.
Some of the protesters said you haven't apologized for actions in the past. Have you apologized, or should you apologize?
Well, it's more complicated than a soundbite will capture. I know that's disappointing, but the fact is that during the Vietnam War, which is what I assume you're referring to, that was a 10-year war in which 6,000 people a week were murdered.
He protested the Vietnam War, which was a pretty serious issue, and, he recanted a lot of the things he did. He wishes he hadn't taken such violent measures. But look, they never targeted civilians. They always called in advance to let them know what they were doing. And yes, bombing's not okay, but he has recanted for that.
Even those protesting the appearance of Bill Ayers today at the UConn campus acknowledged his right to speak. They welcomed the dialogue. Ayers was never convicted on federal charges due to what some could call a technicality in the law. His girlfriend, a fellow member of his radical group, was killed when one of his nail bombs exploded. Ayers is hoping his stop at UConn will help further reforms in education. Tom Lewis, Fox 61, News at 10.